Bonjour. This lesson is on les articles indéfinis, as in the articles, the indefinite articles. So let's start with the definitions of the words that you'll find right here. We have day, and it sounds like our word day, and that means some of the time. Okay, it means only some of the time. But other times, it does not have an English translation. Now, hopefully you've learned that by now. Just because you have 3 words in a French sentence does not mean you will have 3 words in an English sentence. Sometimes there is not a good translation for something in another language. That's because they're different languages. They work in different ways. So that might be a little frustrating, but just remember, it's not a math problem. If you put 3 in, you don't need to get 3 out. So day will mean some of the time, and other times it won't mean anything in English. Let's move on to un, and un can mean a or an, right? And une can also mean a or an. Now the reason I'm highlighting that it can mean a or an is that some people tend to think that une must be an and un must be just the a or the a. That's not true. They both mean a or an. It depends on what the English word is. So just remember, it's either or. The un is for our masculine, and the une is for the feminine. How do you know whether to use masculine or feminine? Hopefully you remember this by now. You have to study it. You have to memorize it. There's not a magic trick for that. That's not what this lesson is, how to magically know if something is masculine or feminine. That's part of what you have to do when you study the words at home. All right, let's move on to what these mean or when you would use them. You'll use the indefinite articles for general circumstances. For instance, you're talking about a cat. Okay, let's talk about a cat. You're not talking about the specific cat that you saw last night, but a cat. You're asking your parents, perhaps, for a cat as a pet. Not the cat you saw wandering around on the street last night. You just want a cat. You don't care what kind. It's general. Okay, so again, general. Remember that. And you can also use the word that's in the name, the indefinite articles, to help. It's in or not definite. It's indefinite. For example, your friend is looking for the papers that they wrote on. They wrote their homework on these papers, the specific papers. But you say, oh, well, I can't find the papers that you're looking for, but I saw some indefinite papers in the hallway. You saw some papers. You're not sure if they're the papers, remember there's the definite article, the papers that your friend is looking for, but you saw some papers. Or you might not even use the word some. You might have just said, I saw papers out in the hall. See how we don't even use that in English? We don't have to put something in there. In French, you do. So that's why there's sometimes no English translation for a word. So again, indefinite or not definite or general, that's when you're going to use these things. Let's go over to our day. Remember, I'm going to rewrite it. It sounds like day, the word. And this is for plural words. They can be masculine or they can be feminine, but if you're talking about more than one, and notice the S here. If you're talking about more than one, that's when you have to use they. So you saw cats walking around on the street last night. We're sticking with the animals here, the animal theme. You saw cats walking around on the street last night. Not the cats that belong to your neighbor. Those would be specific, definite cats. But you just saw cats in general. So that's why you're going to use they. It's indefinite. You just saw cats. You don't even know where they were from. And they're plural. So you notice that S. Right? Now what if you saw just a cat? Un chat. The word chat is masculine. That's just the way it is. If you're talking about a cat and you're not necessarily sure if it's a boy cat or a girl cat, you're just going to say a cat. Then it's going to be masculine, right? The word pen is masculine. That's just the way it is. There's no magic trick to knowing if it's masculine or feminine. You have to memorize it. Please do. So if you're talking about one cat, you're going to say un, or a cat. You want a cat. Okay? Je veux, I want a cat. Un chat. Or a pen, un stylo. A pen. Stylo is masculine, so you have to put un in front of it if you want to say a pen. Now if you want to say a or an eraser, here we go. An eraser. Une gomme. You want an eraser. You have to put une in front of it because gomme is feminine. That's a feminine word. Doesn't mean that only girls can have erasers. It just means it's a feminine word that you should have memorized that when you learn the word eraser, instead of just memorizing gum eraser. Think about it this way. Une gomme, an eraser. Une gomme, an eraser. So you memorize it with the une. That's that feminine reminder. Or you could have even memorized it with your definite article instead, as in la gomme, the eraser. La gomme, the eraser. But as long as you remembered it, you studied it with either une or la, you're still remembering that gomme is feminine, and it will go with that, depending on if you want to say a or the. So une gomme or une grenouille. We'll go back to our animal theme here. A frog. So notice we have une grenouille, a frog, or une gomme, an eraser. Une can mean, again, a or an. And that's for feminine singular words, as in only one. Let me just go back to the pronunciation for un. You are not going to say the n. You're not pronouncing it. It's not un. It's almost like in our word tongue. We're not going to pronounce the T, and we're just going to say that sound right there. So not tongue, we're going to take off the T, and then you're going to take off that G. So just the Your throat is kind of tightening up there, but you're not going to pronounce the N. So that's a French nasal. We do have it in English, but usually we put something at the end of our words, so we don't realize it's there. And the une. I am not saying une as in spoon. Okay, I'm saying une. That U sound right there does not exist in English. So since you've been born, you're not really worried about that sound. You've completely forgotten it existed because you never knew. So it's going to feel funny saying it. But that E is really tight. And we'll learn that in class. We'll practice it in class several times to make sure that you know. It's not the une. We're not saying spoon or une. It's une. Very French sounding. So I hope that helps. Just remember that un or une mean a or an. They both can mean a or an. It just depends on if it's masculine or feminine, and you had to have memorized that. And day means some of the time. And other times it does not have an English translation.